All right, we'll get started. My name is Daniel Warren Hill, and I am the owner and publisher of Alchemical Records, as well as a singer songwriter, guitar player in alternative rock band Yellow Tie Guy. Um, I've also just had a background in 20 plus years of writing, recording, engineering, producing, managing, consulting, uh, and I'm very excited to be able to teach this class. I will say that my claim to fame is grounded not in the fact that I've hit a top 40 chart or been in a magazine that you've heard of necessarily. It's just the fact that I was able to make a living doing something I love, uh, and to do that consistently, to be able to create a lifestyle that pre-pandemic already allowed me to be engaged with my family regularly, and also seeing a vision of working towards something that I'm still creating, which I call the Lifetime Achievement Award. And so, with that, let me share my screen and we'll dive in. Uh, I suppose that this would go away if I was presenting, so let's try that. All right, so discipline, enthusiasm, and vulnerability, or a process that I've termed DEV, which is going to be loosely based on dev in the web and programming development world. And I think that we share similar interests, and I think that there's a lot of the freelance and the coding work and understanding that there's more to be done than just like say building a program or building an app, that there has to be something a transaction had in order to maintain sustainability. And so I find a lot of common ground with that and what we consider the independent creative career, which of course a lot of my backgrounds will be in music, but I feel that they're applicable to just about any field of study that you can imagine. It's all about creating a unique understanding of your needs and how to develop your plan. I use developing. I think it's something that's in motion. It's always occurring. I think it always requires refinement. And so you'll see that kind of continuous thing. Wait a minute. The end. I did this to the first class. Start with why and then begin at the end and work your way forward, which is how I started to come up with the concept of Lifetime Achievement Award, being an artist. I certainly want to be recognized for my contributions in the world of music, but I also have other aspects of myself that kind of contribute to that. And that's where things like the Alchemical Records program as a publication and being very community driven is such a significant part of my personal goals, and it does contribute to my overarching theme. I won't go into the Lifetime Achievement Award now, but it's important for you to understand yours and why you can't imagine yourself in the pursuit of anything else. And so I would definitely encourage you to take a look at our first class if you haven't already. Moving on, how do we get there? Principles. Well, we're going to use the principles of dev: discipline, enthusiasm, and vulnerability. We're going to do that with planning, which is really brainstorming a creative vision of where you'd like to see yourself. And I do like travel plans as a compliment. That if you are going to visit Europe, you're only going to have a certain amount of time to stay in each city. You know, there might have to be very specific restaurants or museums. Some of us don't travel this way, and that's understandable, but there might not be a clear way to be able to budget or to meet up with people. And so the planning component is important in order for you to envision the relationships that you want to have with the destinations that you'll visit along your journey through your creative career. And then the procedure is the application. It is the action of uh, the getting your hands dirty part. Uh, so, of course, discipline, enthusiasm, and vulnerability, those are our principles. Discipline is developing a mindset for consistently reproducing actions which incrementally produce results. That's how you are going to, lose that weight. That's how you're going to save for that trip. Whatever it is, discipline is going to play a component. Enthusiasm, developing a mindset for sustaining joy through lifelong learning and engagement. Obviously, these are not the Webster's dictionary version necessarily, but I think that understanding that when you're on life's adventure, that you have a lifetime to be able to work towards the growth of whatever it is that you're after, and maintaining enthusiasm is a significant requirement. Vulnerability, developing a mindset which allows you to take calculated risks. That may have fallen off my map there, but here we are. So, planning with Dev, how much time do you realistically have to pursue your Lifetime Achievement Award? Well, it may determine how old you are. It may determine whether, there's things uh, that are important to you, having children, finishing college. These are all like not things that are competing with your time. They're things that are just important, that add value to you, that you've made those commitments or those decisions. And so certainly encourage you to continue to finish things that you start, but understand how that contributes to how much time there is in a day. Destination and duration, again, come into play. You can only stay in one spot so long. It's certainly okay to visit, but there should be some calculations of, where do you want to spend the bulk of your time, whether or not, you're kind of transplanting to new homes in the future, whether you feel like you could, pursue your career in, say, a residency in a city for a month or longer. I also like to use the destination the destination concept in the terms of successes, like appearing on the Tonight Show is a great opportunity. I'd love to do it. However, it's only a few minutes and people will move on. There's going to be something happening, immediately after that is going to take people's attention away from it. And again, that's okay. It's just you have to acknowledge the duration that these various destinations might provide. Time management. If you already have a job, don't have a job, all of these things are going to come into play with how you might develop your creative career. If you have no job and you have some savings that you think that you can live off of in order to try to set this thing off, it's a different endeavor than if you are a college student and you are building student loan debt while taking classes, while having a part-time job. And so the timelines could be very different and your needs are going to be very different. How much time can you really realistically spend on this if you break even is a great question. So I also think that it's important to think about what you hope for or anticipate out of this endeavor. What if it, so planning to earn $20,000 is going to be a very different plan than trying to earn $40,000 a year. What if it costs you $1 and earns you nothing? What if it earns you $1 and costs you, $2? What if you're spending $2 for every $1 that you earn? How long could you sustain that kind of enterprise? Because there may be some fluctuations here. Time is money. Of course, we've all heard that. So if you're substituting your day job's income, how much do you need to replace? It's all about your needs. You have to have some kind of goal. The goal can be any amount. It would be unrealistic, maybe to think about quitting your day job and then being able to replicate your day job's income your first year. There would certainly be things of establishing a business, researching a business before you launch, or having an entire year of what you're going to be producing and how you're going to be gaining customers. This is kind of where this class would head in the future, is to try to think big picture about long-term planning in order to create incremental growth opportunities of just being aware of where you are, where you want to be, and being realistic about how long it actually takes to get there. We use the scientific method. It is the safest way to be able to hypothesize, I can't earn $20,000 a year by selling 500 widgets. Okay, great observation, or great hypothesis, test that experiment, analyze the data, report your conclusions. The observation and the research topic area is, again, part of that initial R&D before you might, say, launch that experiment of yours. I think this is how this works. Gosh, math, right? Number of hours per day, number of days per year, hourly price of product. And then we subtract our expenses. Anything we're left with becomes savings. So if I've got a normal 9 to 5 and I'm working 8 hours per day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks per year at $15 an hour, I'm going to earn $28,800 per year. We'll get to expenses in just a little while. So this may not come as a shock to you, but if you increase your hourly rate, you're making more money. So you are able to theoretically decrease the amount of hours you need to work. So if your objective is to get more time, then, like if let's say 20, in the last example here, we're working a $15 an hour job, making 28,000. Now in this example, we're getting paid $20 per hour. We're only working 4 days a week. And so we're able to make just about the same amount of money, but now we've freed up a whole 8-hour day of whatever it is that you want to spend your time doing. Now, if you have a day job, you may not be able to negotiate this kind of relationship. Well, hey, I'll just make more money and work 4 days a week. But I think that never before have we been in a situation where you have work from home capability. There's a lot to be said about, if the work is getting done, then there are companies that are paying for, more of a weekly pay instead of an hourly rate. But we're just using more of a traditional model as an average. I think that communication is also really important. I think that if you're applying for a job for the first time, that you need to be bold and have a conversation with these jobs to create the environment that lets you be flexible when you have other endeavors. I also think that it's a good conversation to have when you feel that there's some overlap or maybe their involvement, in, helping to produce whatever it is that you're also looking to get into. If you're able to communicate that from the onset of the interview, or alternatively to have a conversation when you've been with the company for a little while, and so now you can have conversations about where your future is going to be and what considerations will change with current trends, current differences between going to work, going to the office, not going to the office. Some jobs simply require it, so there will be some modifications, some unique qualities. So 20 hours per week is what's usually considered a part-time job. And if you're able to make $20 per hour for a 20-hour work week and work 48 weeks per year, then you're still making around $20,000 a year, minus your expenses, which again, we'll get to. But $20,000 for a 20-hour part-time work week. And so this might be a way for you to be able to think about your gigs, whether you work inside of an hourly rate, or maybe you work with more of a services oriented company that in the case of a musician, I'm not really selling an hourly rate, even though in some cases I am, like 2 hours might be $200, and then therefore I'm making $100 an hour. But when we do calculate expenses, I've got fuel, I've got practice, I've got equipment, I've got marketing. So it's not always, great to think about it in terms of an hourly rate. Depending on, again, your product or service, it might be more important to sell 500 widgets a year to make $20,000 instead of of selling 500 like service oriented opportunities. But in a gig economy, $100 per gig, if you're able to charge that for a fee for the kind of work that you want to provide, whether it's music or painting or whatever the case might be, if you're able to sell that 192 times a year, then that's $19,000. So the interesting thing is, again, unique marketing opportunities. If I'm a musician, I'm probably playing a gig a night. So that's probably 192 gigs per year. If I'm a painter, I might paint 3 paintings a day. I might not sell 3 paintings a day, but if I'm making 3 paintings a day and I do that for 3 months, and then for 3 months out of the year, I host shows or have sales online or, utilize my Kickstarters or whatever the case might be, that can equate to the same amount of time, just spaced out between a manufacturing process for 3 months and a sales process for 3 months. In theory, it's not impossible to work a full-time job while attending college full-time. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I come from a workaholic family background. And so I was working a 40 to 60 hour work week, definitely, and putting in 14 credits at community college. So it can be done. It is not easy. It is a challenge. But at one point, I was gigging 150 dates per year and earning between $260 and $600 per gig on average. So over 6 or 7 years, certainly when I first started, I was making less money and closer to pre-pandemic, making further on the higher side. But it's not always about, okay, well, every gig is a $600 gig. There are different tiers of gigs, in every industry. If you think about, say, Zoom Personal versus Zoom Business versus Zoom Pro versus, there's different tiers. There might be Zoom Industrial, where people are having more of an office kind of experience in the background, and all of those costs might look at, say, an individual rate, but $15 a month per person is only some contribution to the overall financial income stream of, say, $8 per person, but the company that's paying for it is providing 100 employees all by themselves. So different tiers of products, different customer bases. The challenge, of course, is balance. And, it is common for a 40 to 60 hour work week. But I think that if you look at this chart, you'll see how those things compete for time. So I've included buffer time, which is something I learned from a class that I took and was pretty glad to hear of it. It makes sense in hindsight to think about scheduling time that allows you the opportunity to spend on anything. I also think that this kind of 40-hour work week mentality allows you to allocate time for family, time for yourself, and a good night's rest. So I'm going to step back here and I'm going to share with you let's see, I will share with you this is the document template that I wanted to share with you to give you a chance to help kind of sort out your time. So I've got these color codes. Gray, in theory, you should be sleeping, but I know some people are early risers. You may extend this to be working late into the evening. That's totally understandable. I worked and created a concept around a time management section of a class that I took previously, and mixed it with some of my own unique components. And I think that, again, it's not so important that you feel rigid with these resources, but just know that they're available to you, and that the people that have used them, including myself, have yielded positive benefits. So I start with a sheet that I've called basic and another sheet that I've called detailed. I think that if you can color code your time, you can see, you can identify and organize your time really easily. You're not thinking, okay, well, am I supposed to be reading during this time, or am I supposed to be, what exact task am I supposed to be doing at work during this time? But then on B, I've included that. So a little bit more detail about how my time might be allocated. And then you might have a rule that you follow as well. Like, for example, if I've got an opportunity to have a sales meeting on a Monday during this time, that would be perfect. But if I've got somebody, a potential client or a client that I'm maintaining a relationship with, and they call me or in theory interrupt my day, I'm not going to be like, hey, can I talk to you in an hour, unless I already have something scheduled here. Yeah. Or I'm still going to try to maintain relationships above something that's on my calendar. And I also have been very flexible. Sometimes my family time might get moved down here to 3 o'clock because I don't have any meetings scheduled, but then a client is available at 4:30 instead, and so we might start at that time. This is just a way to really allocate. I have time for regular gaming and time for writing on personal material, things that aren't related to work. I have a music night for performing. So these are ways that I can still like calculate time if I want to practice, or if I want to songwrite, or carve out other time for myself. I've got Sundays during the time that I do my online classes where I can do event planning or planning for those classes. Uh, in the end, you can see that we were still, Matt, the goal is to balance out this time, still get my 8 hours of sleep, and have all my hours accounted for. Now you will still be flexible when you are delivering your own plan. So if now in having made a plan, I always advise reducing expenses. I don't like the starving artist gimmick, but I also think if you're a starving artist, it might be because you've got Netflix and Disney Plus and Hulu, and so maybe picking one, or getting your media from the library, is a better option for you depending on your goals and your big picture plan. Uh, Increased income, obviously, again, it's kind of a no-brainer. So I think you want to think about expanding your enterprise, and we'll get into that in just a second. uh, so you can work as needed. So if you need more money, you can charge more or work more days. I also think it's valuable to let you know that selling is such like an integral part of this. uh, so you have to develop your products, and you also have to take time to engage people on exactly what that is. Uh, so I can say that my work has and still includes things like session musician as a vocalist or a guitarist or bassist, especially those areas, consulting, writing bios and press releases and guest articles and newsletter articles and marketing and management, are all things that I've kind of put out there to be able to have additional income besides performance or gigging. But the important part is to meet your immediate goals and lay the groundwork for your next stage of growth. And so, with that, I'd like to share with you developing your finances is some of the resources included in this class. I have created a budget that I think is very sensible for most likely a single individual with maybe a little room for some co-relationship there. Um, but being realistic with average incomes, average prices around the Washington D.C. community where I live, it may not be uncommon to find an apartment for $2,000 or a mortgage. And so maybe you can find something that costs less, and so you'll be able to budget this a little differently. I've also done things like your car insurance and average maintenance costs, the cost of renter's insurance if you're renting, the average cost of medical and dental um, policy maintenance per year. Uh, so not necessarily planning for every eventuality, but perhaps more than most, we've even included that you could spend $20,000 a year towards your 401k, as well as earning 8,000 in savings from this plan. And you're thinking, okay, well, how exactly are we doing this, right? So look, it starts with, in my case, performing live events. So as a musician, if I was charging $100 a show, I would I could perform 192 shows a year, and I would make $100 a show. And on the average, I would be making $1,600 a month. Now, you're probably uh, well, you're probably not going to duplicate this because you might not have 16 shows in January. You might have 10 shows in January, but you might have 22 shows in February, for example. So I'm just creating this as an average. I think making a copy of this for yourself and then making another copy that you could update or maybe duplicate these tabs for your actual expenses and your actual income. But once you've created opportunities for live events, if you can sell $500 of merchandise at your 16 shows per month, now you've added merchandise to your income stream. You might also still maintain live streaming events, even though it's not a requirement. And so you can make a little money from donations there, or you could try ticketed events. Um, I will say that everything that I'm showing you here is not something that builds up overnight. So you have to work your way toward this, but I will say that it's realistic. I've achieved similar numbers. And so knowing that it's here and knowing that there's people trying to strive for this, and this would be a game changer to be able to make, $85,000 a year in photography by selling services and then finding other supporting endeavors, or as a copywriter, or as a public speaker. I am in your corner. Let's see. So we made a plan. We reduced expenses. We've sold. We've developed our finances. We're laying the groundwork for the next stage of growth. If you have any questions, I would appreciate it if you'd reach out to me. Inspire me at danielwarrenhill.com is the best email to send that to. I'm also occasionally on Instagram at Daniel Warren Hill. I have not budgeted as much time for social media as perhaps I should to maintain kind of a better public relations perspective. But I do try to stay involved, and there's also a lot of activity on the publication Alchemical Records through our social media manager, Mara, whom I thank so much for her time working our social media platforms there. You can find out more about this class, this program, and the work that I'm trying to do, including a book that I'm working on, and the first chapter is available. If you haven't read it, I'd be happy to send it to you. Just send me an email. The publication at alchemicalrecords.com and my music at yellowtieguy.com. Thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.